Everyone in. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We will start in a few minutes, and hopefully more people will join us. Thank you. David, should we start?
I think yes. It's 14:30 Central European Time, 13:30 Greenwich Mean Time. I got it right. Okay. Shall we make a start then? Yep. Okay. Well, we're going to make a start. Good afternoon, everyone. I won't take up too much time with my own introduction. I'm David Kenyon from Sporting Justice, a small community interest company specialising in victim and witness development, helping with policy, and above all, trying to improve outcomes for victims and witnesses in England and Wales, and also done a little bit of work elsewhere, but you're not here to learn about me. Very welcome to this session this afternoon, and grateful thanks to Victim Sport Europe for facilitating this, and I'm sure it's going to be hugely informative, educational and inspiring. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. If you please keep your microphones on mute unless you are speaking, and in the first part of this afternoon's agenda, that will primarily be our three speakers offering their presentations, and also when we come to the question and answer session, if you use the little hands up icon so that, because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, we don't all speak at once. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first presenter this afternoon, Mafalda Valerio from APAV Portugal, who is a project manager, has a master's in clinical psychology, and this is about making information on victim rights a reality, and including those victims that sometimes are marginalized, those with disabilities. So we're going to look at best practice on information provision. And without more ado, I shall now hand over to Mafalda.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mafalda. We can hear you, but we can't see you. Oh, yes.
Can you now see me?
Yes, we can now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining the session. I will now share my screen with you so you can see my presentation. Sorry, it's taking a moment. Can you all hear and see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, David, for presenting me. So my name is Mafalda Valerio. I am a project manager at the Portuguese Association for Victim Support. And I'm very thankful for being invited to present our information provision model, which is called the Info Victims. Probably most of you have already heard about Info Victims, but we believe that this is indeed a best practice in information provision, and it's always a pleasure to be able to present it again. So the right to information is, in our view, the cornerstone of victims' rights, as it is contingent upon its full exercise that a victim may become aware of and benefit from a set of rights established at the EU and national level. Furthermore, the criminal justice system is, in most countries, quite complex to understand for the common citizen and uses almost a language of its own. Bearing these two assumptions in mind, APAV started almost 10 years ago its journey of making information on victims' rights a reality, including for victims of disabilities. Information should be delivered in a language and manner that all victims, and then the particular victims, can understand. The language used in the informative materials shall be easily apprehensible by everyone. There shall be informative tools adapted to the communication abilities of different groups of victims, like children, people with disabilities, etc., and must be available in several languages. And today, this is becoming easier, and translation tools are becoming more and more efficient. When the information is orally transmitted, consideration should be given to that particular victim communication skills at that particular moment, taking into account that additional stress caused by crime may affect this particular ability. Therefore, all the professionals who deal with victims of crime must be properly trained in order to have the minimum communication skills required to provide information to victims. Added to this, the accompaniment of supporting of someone who helps the victim understand the information delivered shall be welcomed. Every victim of crime will, in some moment, ask her or himself questions such as, I was a victim of a crime and since then I'm afraid and anxious all the time. Is this normal? If I want to report a crime, what should I do? Do I have to go alone? What happens next? Do I have to go to trial? With whom will I be in touch throughout the process? Am I entitled to compensation or reimbursement of all the expenses? Falling victim of a crime is a disruptive event in everyone's life. Each person will react in their own way, but little does it know that there are a set of common reactions, emotional, psychological, and even physical, in the aftermath of that event. Lesser does the general public know about the rights prescribed by national, European, and international laws, nor the ways made available in practice for its exercise and effectiveness. The info victims model of providing information to victims of crime is thus on one where, in different member states and therefore in different justice systems, a victim of crime benefits from a set of information materials in her or his mother tongue, explaining in a very simple language which are the rights provision and ways to exercise them from as early as before the crime is reported to the competent authorities. Within the info victims model, the concept rose so that the information could be made available in different formats and in that sense to widen its reach to different target groups and wherever a victim might be. This was the reason why information is made accessible not only online through the Info Victims website and mobile app, but also in brochures and posters. 10 years ago, when the model was conceived, it counted with the essential inputs from the competent authorities themselves, particularly law enforcement and judicial authorities, such as the public prosecution. It was deemed crucial that the authorities could also relate to the informative materials being developed, but also be made aware of victims' rights. As it was also only then that the Victims Directive was starting to resonate in their daily work. Nowadays, not only are info victims informative materials used by law enforcement to explain victims to the criminal justice system, but posters are also found in different courts in Portugal throughout the country. The success of the info victims model is also reflected in the daily use of the informative materials by victim support workers, whom, similar to law enforcement, use them to explain the victim what will happen from that moment onwards. The info victims materials, for those who are not yet familiar with them, not only explain the rights, but also in detail and at 2 clicks of a distance, the different stages of the criminal justice process, who are the different professionals that will take part in the several steps of the proceedings, and which are their roles, a virtual courtroom so that the victim may see who will sit where at the hearing, and a virtual city where one may see the different services of the so-called victim system: healthcare services, social services, forensic medicine, the police station, the court, the State's Commission for the Protection of Victims of Crime, and of course, the victim support services. A great emphasis was also put in practical tips, such as advice to victims and witnesses when giving testimony, information on how to exercise rights, including some examples of applications, contacts of support services, etc. Let me take a few minutes to show you the website. So this is the Info Victims website. The website contains information to victims to crime victims on the following topics. I was subject to a crime, so consequences and reactions. In this section, we describe the most common consequences and reactions of crime victims of crime, and we want victims to know that what they are feeling, what they are going through is perfectly natural. At the same time, we want to give them some simple advice on how to deal with that situation. The criminal proceedings, here we provide a simple description of the process. We try to meet victims' needs in terms of what they want to know, what is important to them when they are engaged in the proceedings. We pay particular attention to issues like why and how to report, practical advice for victims and witnesses who are called to give testimony and going to court. Then the section Who is Who. In this section...
Excuse me?
Yes?
Sorry, Mafalda, we don't see the website at this moment.
So I will stop and reshare again.
Great, thank you.
So,
eu acho que aquilo para aquele cabo. Boa.
Do you see the website now?
No, we only see the page on Virtual City.
Oh, okay. So I will stop the share. And I will open the website. Sorry. Let me try that again. I believe you now see it?
Yes.
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 Perfect.
Okay. So I was in the section Who is Who? So I started in this section. So I was a victim of crime. Within this section, there are a set of information about the consequences and reaction, the most common consequences and reactions for victims of crime in the aftermath of victimization. Then I proceeded to this section, criminal proceedings, where we provide a simple description of the proceedings themselves, and a particular emphasis is put on what is the most important information for a victim to know, particularly why and how to report, and very practical advice for victims and witnesses who are called to give testimony in going to court. So these are the 20 tips at the final part of the section. Then the section Who is Who? Here we want victims to know who participates in the proceedings, what are the roles of each person participating in the proceedings, and what can a victim expect from them. And then the section, last but not the least, victims' rights. Following the directives, dispositions, we want victims to know not only what are their rights, but also how they can be put in practice. We have also a section on useful contacts and a glossary of
Oh,
Sorry, Mafalda?
can't hear very well.
Yeah.
We can see it, but I can't hear you very well. I don't know whether other people can.
No, I cannot hear it.
You cannot hear me?
The sound is very low.
I will try to keep the sound higher. Is it better?
No.
No? Well, but everything is the same. I do. Maybe it's the connection. Is it better now?
Still no.
No? I'm sorry for that. That's probably the internet connection. Let me try to open the door. They closed the door. Não. Eu já não estou a ouvir. Eu acho que a porta se fechou. Is it better now?
No.
No? Do you hear me?
Only just.
Only just.
Only just.
Oh God. And let me try to stop the sharing of the screen. Is it better?
No.
No? We have been having a lot of trouble with the internet connection
Now
today.
it's better.
We're back.
Now it's better?
It's back.
Very loud. There. Thank you.
Oh, great. So I will continue. Let me just find the PowerPoint. Do you still hear me loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay. And do you see the PowerPoint as well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's continue. So as one may see, the informative materials do not only explain which are the rights of victims of crime in different member states of the European Union, as per in the Victims Directive, they also provide information on the consequences and most common reactions a victim of crime may experience in the aftermath of victimization, including information on trauma and 4 central action a victim might do with the impact of the disruptive event. In this sense, Info Victims also aim to increase victims' knowledge about victim support services, who we are, what we do, how can we help, and what people can expect from us. So in the first edition of Info Victims, we counted with the financial support of the Criminal Justice Program of the European Union. APA partnered with VSE Austria, Billy Bespesi from the Czech Republic, and Protofermingiten from Sweden. And the first informative materials were developed and duly translated and adapted to the different country realities. The second edition took place 4 years later and made it possible, also with the financial support of the European Union, to expand the model and adapt the informative materials to the Scottish, Polish, and German realities, with the essential partnership of Victim Support Scotland, Subvenia Victima, and VSE Germany. During this second edition, other than the leaflets, we also had the chance to translate the posters into Spanish and Estonian, although it was within an informal partnership. Last year, with the support of Caixa Geral de Depósitos, a Portuguese bank, the informative materials were made available for victims with disabilities, namely sight and hearing impairments, in a project we've called Inclusive Info Victims. Unfortunately, these products are not yet available for me to show you, but we will do so in a very short notice. This year, we are very pleased that the Info Victims model will widen its reach to Lithuania, Italy, Greece, France, and others, whilst Portugal, Czech Republic, Poland, and Germany will update its materials to new legislative changes of the victim directive. We are honored to count with the support and partnership of our long friends and partners to start this new chapter of the Info Victims model. Victim Support Europe is one of our main partners in this project, which will allow us to push them even forward, particularly in terms of policy development, improved technology, and assessment of its impact in their primary aim, making information a full exercise and a real afforded right for victims of crime in Europe. To this date, the Info Victims model is implemented in 11 EU countries, and it's our vision and ambition to have it extended to the 27. We deeply believe that this is a best practice to be followed and a real asset for all the professionals who daily work with victims of crime in Europe. Thank you so very much for all your attention, and don't hesitate to pose any questions. And I'm sorry for anything that didn't go that well. I'll stop sharing the screen.
Thank you so much.
So that I can see.
Like everything, technology is wonderful when it works and very frustrating when it doesn't. And just not to take up too much time, but just as a very personal observation, I'm very sorry that you had to say there at the end that you're hoping to extend this to the 27 members of the European Union, not 28. Anyway, moving swiftly on, and if you do have any questions, please store them and we'll come to the Q&A section after the next two presentations. But I'm going to move on very quickly now to Livia from Croatia. That's all right with you, Livia, who founded White Circle in Croatia. I can't pronounce it in Croatian. I'm afraid it's going to have to stay at White Circle in English. But aiming to improve help for victims and advice and help shape, I'm sure, government institutions that have engagement with victims and witnesses. So without further ado, over to you, Livia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for your introduction, and thank you all for joining this session. I'm really happy to share with you White Circle Croatia, our new project, interactive web map of social service providers for victims in Croatia, which is founded with the help, with the assistance of European Social Fund. For the beginning, I would like to say something about Victims' Rights Directive. I'm sure that you all know that the aim is that victims have access to confidential victim support services free of charge, acting in the interest of the victims before, during, and for an appropriate time after criminal proceedings. So victim support is crucial because it empowers victims to report a crime, participate in criminal proceedings, claim compensation, and ultimately recover as much as possible from consequences of crime. So to achieve this goal, victims must be timely informed about their rights and support services. Croatian practice indicates difficulties in accessing justice, mainly due to lack of information and insufficient support and protection. So keeping that in mind, as well drawing lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic, we came up with the idea of creating an interactive web map of social service providers for victims, and thus improving the level of information using digital technology. The map is based on the survey, which consulted 60 identified existing service providers for victims in Croatia. According to this survey, the majority of victim support services have been provided by civil society organizations. So out of total of 60, 45 or 75% are civil society organizations, while 8 or 13% are local institutions or religious communities. Only 7 of them are state institutions. In fact, they are victim support departments organized at county courts that provide general victim support. Although the Ministry of Justice has decided to fully institutionalize the victim support system in Croatia, organizing victim support department at 13 other remaining courts, in practice that is not happening. In fact, victim support system in Croatia is still based on civil society organization, although they are burdened with problems of insufficient financial and operational sustainability. In the other hand, many of NGOs in Croatia have a long-term experience in helping victims since the homeland war of the 1990s. Most of them are specialized in domestic violence, but recently they have expanded their scope of services toward the victims of all forms of violence and respond to a broader scope of victims' needs. According to our survey, 28 organizations, or 40%, provide the support for victims of domestic violence, and 32 or 53% provide the support for the victims of all kinds of violence. Unfortunately, services are limited in their geographical scope, with most being locally available, which is clearly visible on the map. You will see it later. The highest number of services are available in Zagreb and few bigger cities in Croatia, while some parts of Croatia, for example, western parts of the country, show a worrying absence of any services. This is exactly why the 116006 helpline is so important in Croatia, and thus available to all victims irrespective of the type of crime and their location. I have to mention that 7 other organizations operate throughout Croatia as well. It is understandable that the map should be continuously promoted in order to make information about it available to as many people as possible. So during the first promotional campaign last month, we recorded great results. Only our first promoted Facebook post reached over 11,000 views and 70 shares. Interestingly, younger men were more interested in the content of the post than women. 60% of the men aged 18 to 34 and 40% of women aged 55 and older. Our goal is to intensively and continuously promote the map by the end of 2021. A map will be also offered as a free resource to victim support providers, as well as any other interested institution or organization. These entities will be asked to put the map visibly onto their website and invite victims and their supporters to use it as a source for finding assistance and services. For example, map may be placed on website of courts, prosecutors' offices, police, medical institution, etc. We must be aware that communication with victims needs to take account of changes in the way the world communicates. Assistance and support are mainly provided through direct communication. Face-to-face contact and telephone are still the preferred communication channel with victims. However, it appears that providing assistance and support through emails, internet, and social networks is becoming increasingly important, especially considering consequences of the COVID pandemic crisis. It can be concluded that developing online support services are using modern communication platform together with looking into using mobile applications for communication with victims needs to be part of developing future services for victims in Croatia. I will, with this, end this short presentation in the end, and thank you very much for your attention. I would like to Eileen to share the short video presentation, and I'm happy to answer your questions if there is any. Thank you again.
Thanks very much, Livia.
Do you see the YouTube?
Yes, we see, but yeah, okay.
Oh.
It's insufficient. Considering that working with victims in Croatia in practice generally indicates insufficient information about social service providers for victims, we came up with the idea of creating an interactive web map of social service providers for victims. In fact, local residents need to be aware of the existence of victim support agencies in their community and the range of services provided, so that they know where to turn in times of need. It is especially important for hard-to-reach victim populations, such as victims in rural areas, victims with disabilities, homeless, and elderly people. In order to explain the content of the map itself, it is necessary to briefly explain the functioning of victim support system in Croatia. The victim support system in the Republic of Croatia is highly institutionalized and managed by the Ministry of Justice. It consists of the Victim and Witness Support Department in the county courts. Out of a total of 20, they were established in only 7 county courts: Osijek, Rijeka, Sisak, Zagreb, Split, Vukovar, and Zadar. They provide support to victims or witnesses of criminal offenses and alleviate stressful situations of testifying and staying in court. Due to the fact that the departments have not yet been established in the 13 remaining county courts, the Ministry of Justice has included civil society organizations in the victim support system through the network of support and cooperation for victims and witnesses of criminal offenses. Taking into account the general lack of providers of this type of social services in Croatia and their uneven territorial distribution, we consider it very useful to include in the map CSOs that have been operating at local or county levels for many years and have been recognized for the quality of their services. Therefore, as you can see, this map contains a total of 20 providers as part of the institutional victim support system in Croatia and 40 non-institutional providers who help victims cope with psychological, emotional, social, and practical problems by providing information, legal advice, emotional, psychological, and practical assistance. We want to point out that the National Free SOS Helpline 116006 is also an integral part of the map. We believe that web-based and mobile technology offer amazing potential for outreach and can be used to bring needed services directly to victims in need. Our version of the map is located inside our WordPress website, backed up by databases and various plugins to make it work seamlessly on all platforms. It can be used on mobile devices as well as PCs and laptops. There are also challenges. Technology is not cheap. We must address privacy and confidentiality concerns, and too many organizations that already struggle with funding do not have the money to invest in technology.
Thanks very much, Annelies. I would say, I know Livia said if there are any questions, if we could hold them to the Q&A, if we could just hold any questions. If you have any questions, please just make a note of them, and we will come back to that session at the end of the third presentation.
Yeah.
I'm not confident that if we get lots and lots of questions, I'll handle the session very well, and we might end up with poor Leah being abandoned, which would not be good at all from any point of view. So that was most interesting, and the video was very informative, and I'll come back to that later. So if we move on now to Leah, Policy Officer at Victim Support Europe, who's going also leads on Victim Support Europe's terrorism response facility and cross-border referral system. So it's over to you, Leah, if that's okay. Off we go.
Yes, thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this side event. It's great to see many of you here. My name is Leah. I'm working with Victim Support Europe for a bit more than 2 years. And I will present you today, just go back to the first slide, sorry. I'll present you today VSE referral system that we have implemented this year. So next slide, please. So what we've seen with Victim Support Europe in the last 30 years that we are around, and what also is the daily basis work of our members, is really the struggle of victims to access information and support for different reasons. And we heard them already in the previous presentation. Information on rights, information on available support might not be available or accessible in the country, and sometimes services don't exist in some countries. Of course, for cross-border victims, this is even more complicated. When we talk about cross-border victimization, we mean crimes where people become victimized in another country than their country their country of residence. It can also be crimes that have impacts and consequences in the victim's country, for example, cybercrime. So these cross-border victims face a large range of challenges while facing a crime in another country. They might not speak the language of the country. They don't have the social network with them that could support them in the first place. They are not acquainted with the legal system of the country and the rights that they are entitled to. They might also not stay for a long time in the country, and all these challenges make it more difficult for cross-border victims to access information and support. It's also important to say that there are more than 14 million EU citizens living in a member state that is not the one where they were born in. There is an increased mobility of people in the EU, and there is also an increasingly globalized nature of crime. There is more and more people becoming a victim of crime in another member state. Of course, tourists are such a category and are mostly vulnerable to crime, but there is also international terrorism, sexual exploitation of children, human trafficking, cybercrime, and these crimes are increasing. Maybe specifically on the victims of terrorism, as David mentioned, as VSE, we are leading and maintaining a terrorism response network that we created informally after the Paris attack in 2015, and where we realized with our members in France that there was a lack of cooperation between member states with providing information and support to foreign victims. France Victim came to us with a long list of foreign victims impacted by the attack in Paris, and they asked for our help to ensure that these victims get the same information and quality support in their home country. We receive a lot of requests, both from our members, but also external partners, for foreign victims to receive information about their rights or the legal system from another country. Next slide, please. So what is really important for us, and this referral system connecting to the right to information, the subject of this side event, is really important for us to be able to connect the victim to the right organization, but also to give them the right information. It's important for the victims, of course, to receive the information, but we think it's also important for our members to be able to understand and to have knowledge of the different rights and the different legal system, the access to compensation, or what different services exist in other countries, to be able to build their knowledge and also answer any questions that they can have from different victims. So how we did this before was a really simple emailing system where a VSE member in country A would contact us because they have a victim who was victimized in country B, and they needed to have information and be connected with a victim support organization in country B. So really easily, we would have someone assigned to this in our staff, and by sending email to our contact in country B, if we have a member there, we would do really this ad hoc and emailing system. But we quite soon realized that this system had its own limits. First of all, because of the increased number of cases, more and more victims would also come to us, contacting us VSE for information. Our membership has doubled in the last 5 years, so more and more members from different countries and in contact with foreign victims. And we are also, as an organization, more and more known at the European, but also at the international level. So we realized that with this emailing system, we couldn't longer offer an efficient and an appropriate response. We also realized that this emailing system was complicated with the time frame between the request of the victim and the victim receiving the support or the information. A third limit, and I'm sure that you're all really busy and receiving a lot of emails every day, so we realized also that some information, important details or deadlines could be lost in the large amount of emails that people are receiving every day. So we wanted to avoid having this emailing system anymore. And lastly, of course, an important point is data protection. We want to ensure that sharing information about victims is done in a safe environment for the data and the privacy. So the solution we found is an online system reserved for VSE members. Next slide, Annelise. So we have created our own referral system that can be found on our new intranet. The new system was launched in May 2020. We had a similar system on our previous intranet, but we realized that members weren't using that system very often and in a regular basis, so we decided to rebuild completely this system. So at the moment we have 48 members representing 26 countries on the system. So I will explain you a bit later how the system works in practice, but basically a VSE member in country A is able to go and fill out a form with victims' information and send it to VSE member in a country B, and this person would receive the information really easily. So why not all our members are present in this referral system? Very easy is, first of all, because sometimes we have several members in one country and they might not all of them assist victims directly. So for example, David organization Supporting Justice is a VSE member, but they let Victim Support England and Wales deal with victim directly, and this is why, for example, Victim Support England and Wales represent England in the referral system. Every time we have a new member joining the membership, we explain them the system, and we of course offer them the possibility to join it. So the goal is really to have more and more organization and country represented on the system. So far we had 18 cases used within the system. Next slide, please. So these are the 4 principles under which we operate our referral system. So the first one, trust and cooperation. Of course, it's one of the fundamental principles that we try to work under with our member, is the trust that these members and the people working there will be able to offer a quality service and will be able to offer the right information and the appropriate and targeted support for the victims. It's also a question of cooperation between our members, and of course all our members might not know other members, so when we have conferences in presence, it's always nice to meet people in person and be able to recognize and trust the person to whom you will send your referral case. The second principle is a victim-centric system. We really ensure that victims' rights are at the center of the system and that it remains a priority. So you will see a bit later in the form, there is a possibility to enter different kind of information about the victims, the preferred time when they would like to be contacted, the language that they speak. The organization also have the possibility to add attachments, so some documents that might be important, so the victim might not repeat their case all over again to a new person. And we really try to design this system around the specific situation of cross-border victims. So for example, the language that the victim speaks, that might not be a detail that is needed in the national referral system, but in this cross-border situation, this is really important. The respectful treatment is also very important, and to make sure that the victims receive the right support in an appropriate time frame also. The third principle is the privacy and data protection. So within our intranet, we have privacy policy and terms of use that all intranet users have agreed on, and the intranet system is secured with a password protected system. And what is important to understand is that this system is not accessible to all intranet users. We only made the system available and accessible to one person per organization, per VSE member represented in the system. Organizations are also asked whether they have a legal basis to transfer victims' information to another country. And if they don't, the case would directly go to VSE and we would support them dealing with this situation. All data are deleted after a certain amount of time, and we only keep anonymous data for statistical and reporting purposes. Finally, we wanted to make an easy system. So what we saw also with the previous emailing system was that VSE, we didn't want VSE to remain an intermediary between the organization. So with this online system, VSE provide the platform, but we leave the organization the ability to discuss with each other and without us interfering. To have also one person per organization who is responsible for this is also very important, especially in larger organization. So each of them have a referee to use this case and to know how to use it also. Next slide, please. So just very quickly, the different scenarios where the system would be used. So you see this 3 first check, and the last one is a bit more tricky. It's not impossible, but it's a bit more tricky. So in the first 3 scenarios, we have members in the country where the victim lives, where they've been victimized, and where they want to receive information. So in this case scenario, really easily, the members would be able to use the referral system. In the scenario D, the victim was a victim of a crime in Argentina, and they would like to receive information about their rights in Argentina. Unfortunately, we don't have yet a member in that country, and this is where the referral system has also its limits. Because we only have countries and organizations that are our members. So in that case scenario, we would simply use our broader network, international contacts, in order to receive information. We try to connect with the government, with neighboring country who might have more contacts for this particular country. So next analysis, we will go online on the system directly. Perfect. I know that's yes. Okay. So it's gone. Yes, thank you. So this is how the referral system looks online. So this is a new ticket created, so a new case created. Annelise has kindly already filled some of these fields, so we don't lose so much time. But you see the form is quite easy. We are asking for the name of the person who's sending the case, their organization, their country. You can give a title to the case, so it's more easy to find in the list of the different cases that you've sent or received. And you can also give a priority to your case. So it can be, now I don't see the different fields, but yes, low, medium, and I don't remember, and urgent, high priority, exactly. So this would actually give an information to the person receiving the case in how many days they should answer the case. So we've given a guidance document to organization using this referral system, and all this information are in there. Then we ask for the victim's names, nationality, gender, the location of the victim, another victim-centric detail, the victim's contact and the preferred ways to be contacted. So it can be email, phone, what time they would like to be contacted, etc. Whether they have any disability or special needs. And then the person can write some information about what is their request, what the victim needs in this country, and they also have the possibility to attach a file in the system. So then the person is asked whether they have a legal basis to transfer the information. If they click no, then the case would directly be sent to VSE. If they click yes, they would then need to choose the country to where they would like to send the case. So let's choose, maybe not test, but a country, maybe Belgium. And then would appear the different organization. Now you can't actually see it, but it's a drop-down menu with the different VSE members based in Belgium. So there is always the possibility to send the case to VSE in case there is any doubt to whom to the right organization to send the case, and then VSE has the possibility in the backend to refer the case to the right organization. So then, really quickly, if you go on the other page, Annelies, you will be able to see how the system is then working when you have received a case. So if you scroll down a bit, in the first box, at the bottom, you have the information that I sent to Annelies as a test. Of course, I haven't put any sensitive information, but it's a test to show you. So you have all this information that you've put in the form, and by receiving an email notification letting you know that you've received the case, you're then able to access this case. And if you scroll up, then you're able to answer and have an actual conversation with the person. So you can ask for further information, or you can let the person know that you're dealing with the case and that the victim will be contacted in X days, for example. So we can go back to the PowerPoint. Thank you, and you can go to the next slide. So yes, so as I mentioned, it's a ticketing system and it's a notification system. So people who are assigned to their organization will receive an email, notification email in their email box, letting them know that they have received a case and that they are welcome and invited to check it and to answer it as soon as possible, of course. So everything stays on the system, no information are taken out of the system, and you only receive email notification. So next slide. In the three next slide, I'll just quickly show you some statistics. So these are, for example, the number. Don't we have? No, sorry. So these are the number of referral per country. So in blue is the country that send the referral, and in yellow or orange the one that have received referral. So you can see that France has used the referral quite a lot, but also us at VSE, because we also receive quite a number of requests from victims directly to us by email or phone sometimes. So we also personally use the referral system to refer a victim to our members. Next slide. So this just gives you an idea of the nationality of the victim. So it's quite diverse. We have Spain, France, the Netherlands, in the majority the UK. Sometimes the nationality is not mentioned. So we also keep that information, and you see that there's been more cases concerning women than men. And yes, you can go to the next slide. And these are the type of crime that have been raised in this referral system. So it's also quite diverse. And these represent the cases that were sent and received since May this year. So next slide. And it will be my last slide. So what are the next steps for us and for the system? So as you understand, it's quite a new system. We are also trying to learn from our members, from external partners, and we will, of course, we are planning to do an evaluation of the system, asking our members who are using the system, how they find it, whether they think it should be improved and in which way, but also asking the members who are not using the system why and what's the reason. Whether is it because they don't find it useful, or is it because they have other ways of referring cross-border victims to other victim support services. We will also see whether there is a possibility to add and the willingness from our members to add additional functions to the referral. We want to, within the development of our new intranet and the new website, we also want to create some social hubs and a forum available for members. So that would also be a possibility for people to discuss maybe some topic in a private way, also not using emails. We are also thinking of opening the system to non-members. So we have around 60 members in Europe, but also outside of Europe. But we have a much broader network of organization experts around the world. As you know, we also work a lot with the InVictim network that is working for victims of terrorism. We work a lot with our sister organization, Victim Support Asia. So we are trying to see how we could make use of this network and let them maybe use our system. Of course, we need to ensure quality in the service that is delivered by this organization. And it's always a question of trust and cooperation. And finally, we're also thinking about maybe developing a separate system in case of terrorist attack, because as I mentioned, our terrorism response network is working also on an informal basis, on an ad hoc basis when a terrorist attack happens in the EU or outside of the EU where EU citizens might be involved. And we really try to ensure that every victims get the support and the information they need in their home country. So we are also thinking about maybe having some referral system open for these specific types of situation, let's say. Of course, this is also all important for us and one of our priority. Information provision is also something that we're looking to develop and improve on our new website that will be launched next year, beginning of 2021, and the development of our intranet. So we are creating country fact sheets with information on the right of the victim in each country, and Info Victim will be really helpful on this. Also the mapping of the different organizations available and services available in the country. So of course, all of this needs timing, resources and funding. So we are always looking at developing ourselves and the information we provide. So this is our plans for the future. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to any questions.
Thanks very much, Leah. I'm sure that the three fabulous presentations will have generated a lot of interest and a lot of questions. Just one observation from me before we go on. I think it's absolutely fantastic that if you look back 30 years, provision of support for victims and witnesses was considered by many criminal justice agencies to be a few good-hearted, well-intentioned people who would actually sit down with somebody, offer them a cup of tea and a biscuit and say, there, dear, you'll soon get over it. How far we have all come. And the other is that there's a support which a lot of people will still need. There are wonderful ways of actually reaching people, engaging them, giving them access to service, information they require, and providing support by means of modern technology, digital tools, the internet, and so on, which has become, I think, ever more important, particularly during the last year's COVID crisis. So it's not for me to hog the limelight. I'm going to throw open the floor to questions, and as I said at the beginning, just in case you missed it, it would be really useful if you could just use the little hand signal, raise your hand, and then you will be asked, as long as I am completely paying attention to the screen, to ask your question. And top tip of the day, because I've done this so many times, I've started to ask questions on these kind of fora or other meetings and forgotten to turn off my mute button. So if you are going to ask a question, stage 1, put your hand up. Stage 2, sounds a bit like school, so I apologize for that. Turn your mute button off and then fire away. Marvelous. Anybody questions? I've got a couple, but I'm not going to start. Let's see if we get to anybody. Any hands up?
If people also want to ask questions in the chat, if they're not comfortable taking the floor, there is also the possibility next to the hand button, there is a little conversation and there is the chat, but I see a hand raised.
I see Matu, if you would like to unmute and fire away.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. It was really good to see that again. I was just wondering, I don't know if this is the right form for this, but I was thinking about in our organization, we've been thinking that since there's only one person who is dealing this, it's a little bit vulnerable. Sorry, it's a little hard if I'm sick or if I'm on holiday. So we might need another person who could also get into the referral system so that it can be used all the time.
Yes, thank you, Matu, for the question. It's a really good question, and we had this already talked about this a bit in the webinar that we organized for organization within the referral system. So at the beginning, we allowed some organization to have more than one person, but we had some technical issue with this, and people weren't getting the notification when they would receive a case. So at the moment, we keep it for one person, and we try to remind the users that if they are on holiday or sick, that they try to create rules in their mailing system that this specific email notification from the referral system goes to another person who is able then to access it. Of course, looking at improving the system and taking all these comments from the users is very important. So we're looking at this this possibility, yes.
Thanks, Leah. And anyone to wishing to raise their hand? Very quiet. No, yeah, Simona, please ask your question, make your observation, and unmute.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I wanted to ask about the info victim model. If there is some experience with using simple language for people, maybe with some mental disabilities, or what level of age, or simplifying the information would be the best. So sometimes they speak about the level of an 8-year-old child. Sometimes you hear about the level of a 12-year-old child. So what is your experience on which level we should provide victim the information so that it is easy understandable?
If I may, thank you, Simona, for your question. Indeed, we have experience in providing information not only to victims with disabilities. As I mentioned during my presentation, we now have materials developed to victims with sight and hear impairments, so people who don't see and people who don't hear, and for child victims or youngsters, we do have what we call ABC Justice, which is a small project we did only in Portugal, so it's not an EU-wide project, but we did a pilot one here in Portugal, in which we have adapted the language to simplify it even more, in order for youngsters to understand it. We have made it more graphic in a way, so we made movies instead of having a lot of information written. We have information written, of course, but we have youngsters themselves explaining the different parts of the justice system and the rights of them as victims of crime within the justice system. And we have also included within the ABC Justice the specific the specific laws that apply to child victims here in Portugal. I don't know if I answered all your questions because I was not hearing you that well.
And do you think, is it possible to use this simplified version for children also for people who do not have a good education, or maybe they are mentally not so, I don't have the right term now,
yes,
mental disabilities?
Yes, indeed. So I believe that for people with some kind of mental illness or some kind of disability, a mental disability, probably the ABC Justice form would be more suitable. Although the info victims is really written in a way that is really simple. So we do not use legal terms. We use very simple language that almost anyone can understand, even someone that never even filed any complaint to the police, that never even saw what a complaint was, or never had any type of contact with the justice system. So if you can go to the infovictims.com, it's available in English. So every website, I didn't mention it during my presentation, but each website of the different countries are made in the mother tongue of the country, but then they have an English version of the website as well, so that not only national victims can have access to knowledge about the functioning of the criminal justice system in that specific country, but also cross-border victims can, and well, of course in English, have accessible information about the justice system in that given country. And being in English, you can easily see that the language is really, really simple.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nepalda. Just before anybody else jumps in, Olivia, if I could just ask you, you highlighted in your presentation that information and access to support are obviously vital for all victims. But then you said there are hard to reach. It was really great to hear you reference the homeless, because in many ways they are even more marginalized, because they have all the other issues that people might have, vulnerable people, and the fact that they have no stable base. I just wonder if you've got any insights there from your experience of how we can better engage with not weak communities, but people who are homeless, often transient. There might be refugees, asylum seekers. If you've got any perspectives or insights there, I'd be really interested to hear them.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. In Croatia, that is a practice that not just the victims, but only other marginalized groups, as you mentioned, homeless people and the migrants and etc. They all should be informed about their rights if they are victims. In our case, because we are dealing with victims, they should be informed about their rights and available services through the police. The police is first contact, first point to inform the victims about all the necessary information they have to. They should know about their case in this moment that a crime is happening. But in practice, unfortunately, there is no systematic approach for referring victims from police and prosecution authorities to victim support organizations. So many victims, as well, receive information on available services when they need it the most. So I think we should work more as a society to encourage, in the first point, the police officer to clarify the content of right form, because the police officers, each police officer should provide the victims with one notification with all rights they get as a victims, but that rights are not clarified enough. So I think it should instruct them and train them enough to be aware of importance, not only the rights that each victim have, then a victim support organization, because as I mentioned in my previous speech, the support services is very important. Many victims that approach to us, to our organization, needed to be empowered, encouraged to report the crime, to talk about that all they are dealing with in their lives. So I think that is first step, education, and additionally, role of media is very important, because media is important to additionally inform as many victims as possible at the earliest stage after reporting a crime to the police, as well as before reporting to the police, to receive information on available forms of assistance and support. So education and raising awareness, I think that's the most important issue and area that we as a whole society have to work in the future.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Thanks, Livia. I don't know, Mafalda, you've got your hand up. You want to chip in?
Yes. With regard to your question, we here in Portugal do have a lot of homeless people. They are mostly people with mental illness and with addiction problems. They are victims of crime often, but they are not that easily accessible because they don't like to be approached that much. So it's not easy to engage with them. It's easier if we partner with basic services they need, like food. For instance, there are a lot of civil society organizations that provide food for the homeless. Probably that's a good way. For the asylum seekers and refugees and also migrant victims, it's a little bit different. We have a lot of neighborhood-based organizations that are, some of them are migrant associations that closely work with APAV. And we have, as a national coverage organization, tried to have as much partnerships as possible, also with the government, to make a portrait of the most relevant communities, migrant and refugee communities here in our country. And we have tried to also produce awareness raising materials, particularly about the existence of support services that are available to them. But this is also a political question because most asylum seekers or refugees, particularly those that do not have papers yet, they are too afraid to ask for support for the risk of deportation. And oftentimes the authorities also, and as NGOs know that we are mostly funded through projects, and governments will only fund projects that are that only work with the people that already have their processes of legalization, let's say, started.
Yeah, I think it's a good observation. I think often marginalised people don't have very much trust in state institutions. Can I just say, because we've got a few minutes left, if there are, has anybody got any questions? I don't want to hog the questions, but if nobody is going to put their hand up, just got one for Leia. But please, I get tired of speaking. I talk to myself too often. If anybody has something to say it, please. Okay, Leia, one for you, if you don't mind. On the referral network, I just wonder if there's been any interest, buy-in, support from criminal justice agencies, jurisdictions across Europe. So from the police, from prosecutors, if they've bought into this, can see the value of it, and how that might be taken forward if there has been, or I'm sure you're addressing it if there hasn't.
Yes, it hasn't, and I think for one reason is that the system is quite new to us also, and that we keep it inside our network and our membership. But of course, we know that our members also have this referral system in place within their own country. And the ENVR, the European Network for Victims' Rights, is also it's an NGO of actually governments, of ministries of justice working for victims of crime. And this governmental network is also quite used, especially during terrorist attack. But we hope our system is also an example and can be taken as a good practice for at the international or European or international level.
Yeah, I think potentially criminal justice agencies and the police could see this as a really good news story that could actually help them for very little input, or in fact doing nothing other than saying it's here, we're promoting it, it's great. And politicians who always like to look good at doing very okay. Have we got, well, how are we doing for time? 2 minutes, is that right? Annalise, are you keeping a close eye on the clock? Has anybody got
2 more minutes?
Any questions or observations that can be beautifully and succinctly made in 2 minutes? I don't see any hands up at all. So in which case, I just think it's been stimulating and interesting and informative this afternoon. And as I said earlier, to see so much that's going on, particularly at a very difficult time for so many people, and to know that, you know, even people like me are not only having to, but now I think willingly embracing modern technology with a recognition that we can actually reach a lot more people that we couldn't before, but also recognizing that what we all do, I think, is based on the victim, the witness, and their choices, and re-empowering them and helping them to cope and recover, and not taking decisions away from them, but actually giving them the information, the knowledge, and the support to make those informed choices. So I'd really like to thank all our presenters this afternoon, and particularly for being wonderfully guided through it all by Annalise, who I think mastered the technology in a way that I could only ever aspire to. So I don't know, Leah, whether you want to do a final kind of sum up thank you on behalf of VSE.
Sure. Thank you also, David, for moderating this side event. It's been a pleasure. And I would just like also to remind everyone that the recording of this morning conference, but also of the other side event of this afternoon, will be made available on our website and different social media, I think also the YouTube channel. So if you didn't have the chance to attend the other side event, there's also the possibility to watch the recording. Thank you everyone for joining. It's been a pleasure. And don't hesitate to get in touch with us via our website, or you can find our email address quite easily also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Annalise, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.